If you are anything like me, a solo content creator, or as I'd rather be known, a lone wolf, you'll understand the limitations of working with just a couple of static cameras and lights in your studio or workshop. It can all feel a bit confining. Now, this channel covers lots of drone and FPV stuff and some other tech, basically whatever captures my curiosity, from in-depth product reviews and DIY projects to straightforward tech tutorials. I've got my main camera set up over here and an overhead camera up here and some lights, but it's all a little bit static. Now, I don't really want to go all YouTube relevant with blurry backgrounds, pink and purple mood lighting, stupid captions, tattoos and baseball caps, but adding some dynamic camera movements and following the action a bit more closely would definitely give me some new perspectives. These are the OBSBOT Tail Air PTZ cameras, my new virtual camera crew. These AI-powered little marvels aren't just cameras on gimbals. They're intelligent enough to track my every move, plus a whole lot more. Let me show you how. Hello, and welcome to the Whirly Bloke channel. The past few weeks I've been trying to fathom out how I can incorporate the OBSBOT Tail Air cameras into my current setup. But before I show you some new perspectives that they've opened up for me and potentially other creators, let's start with a quick look at their specs. This Tail Air is a PTZ camera, that's pan, tilt and zoom to you and me, that can be manually controlled with an app or a smart remote. But probably the most compelling feature is the advanced AI auto tracking and zoom. It's sort of like having your own personal videographer just following you around. The camera itself supports UHD resolutions up to 4K 30 frames a second or 1080 at 60 frames a second. And it's got dedicated auto tracking for people, animals and objects, which works really, really well compared to the other systems that I've used, and I'll show you all that in a minute. The camera has got a 1/1.8 sensor with 8 optical lenses built into here and a 4x digital zoom. It's got fixed aperture of f1.8 and an ISO range of 100 to 6400, and you can use auto or manual focus. And there's some presets for style and some manual settings for the usual things like sharpness, contrast and so on. Now, I haven't fully explored all these settings yet because I've just been having way too much fun just using all of this on auto. The video format is MP4 using H.264, H.265 codecs, and the photos are again 4K or 1080p. It's got a built-in microphone and some noise reduction that's available as well. And the gimbal is lovely and smooth with no jitters. And it's, as far as I can tell, completely silent. You get about 150 degrees of pan, like that, and it tilts up and down 90 degrees each way, but it's limited on the down because the body gets in the way. But it's still a pretty good range. It's got 2.4 and 4.8 gigahertz Wi-Fi and Bluetooth BLE 5.0 built in. But it's not just limited to wireless connections to record video or for live streaming. There's a slot here for an SD card, and there's a mini HDMI video output connector. And there's options to transmit over the network using NDI if you use one of these USB-C to Ethernet adapters that you can buy as well. It's got its own internal LiPo battery that you can charge on the USB-C connector here, and I found it takes about 90 minutes to fully charge. Runtime though does depend on the video resolution you've set, but it seems to be about 140 minutes. It'll easily do 2 hours. Obviously you could power this using an external supply or a larger USB power pack if you're running for longer outdoors, maybe filming a sports field or something like that. Now you can just put this on the desk, but you can also put it on a tripod or stand using the 1/4 mount that's on the bottom here. Now this oozes durability and quality craftsmanship. It just feels very robust and very well constructed. Now, as well as using their app, this thing here to control multiple tail airs, there's also this smart controller. I've got another one over here and you can see it working. There we go. Very easy to move around. Now you can control up to 3 cameras with this, and I found I've been using this more than the app to control a couple of cameras. It's just so intuitive to use without having to look at a phone screen. And I've tended to use the app more as a sort of gallery monitor and to do all the initial setup. There's not much that OBSBOT haven't included with this. The price is £419 for the camera, £65 for the smart remote, and £79 for this USB-C to Ethernet NDI adapter. But you'll also need to purchase an NDI license for another £75 if you think you need to use this. The app's free, and there's discounted multicam combos available on their website that I'll link in the video description below. I'm planning to do some follow-up videos on this as I discover more about it, but for now I'll show you just how much fun I've had with it over the past few weeks. Subscribe for updates and hopefully you'll get a flavour of how these might improve your video production, whether you're indoors, outdoors or live streaming. Well, let's try out the Tail Air in a real tracking environment. So I've got one set up here on a tripod, other one over there. They're both running at 4K and I've got them set to auto everything. So it's auto track, auto zoom, all the camera settings are on auto, and we'll see how it goes. Is it tracking me? Let's go and sit down over here next to the dog. Doggy, you quiet. And this does actually have human, animal and object tracking, so at some stage I will actually test all that just to see how sensitive it is to on those different settings. Let's go and walk over here and see how this one's doing. How quickly will it track me? Pretty good. You can set the response time to this on fast. I've got it set on standard at the moment. What's this one doing? Well, it's recording, but I need to turn on the auto tracking. There we go. Hand gesture. Very nice. Hello. So you can monitor this using the app here, which is very nice, and you can control it with the smart remote as well, which is very good. What do you think about it? Let's have a look over this way and see how quickly it tracks me out of that. Seems to be pretty good. I think if I put it on fast, that may actually track me a bit quicker, but I think for this sort of environment where you're walking around, this is probably more than adequate. If you were using it for maybe football game or something on a sports field, then you might want it on fast. But I think that looks pretty good. Hello, how are you? And let's see how it tracks me up here. Not sure it's going to cope. We're going behind this vine. It seems to have lost me, but what happens if I walk back into frame? It's picked me up again. And one of the nice things with the smart remote is that if it gets in a bit of a pickle, say it loses tracking, whatever, you don't quite know where you are, you just double press, show you, double press this and it goes back to a neutral position. And to turn the tracking on, I can either use gesture or I can just press the button on the remote and it goes back into tracking. And on here you've got a selection of human tracking, object tracking and animal tracking. Well, fantastic. This is a fairly standard setup if you're doing YouTube reviews of products in your studio or workshop. Invariably, you'll have a camera that's looking you straight in the face like this, where you're chatting away about how wonderful the OBSBOT Tail Air is, or whatever it is you're reviewing, and then you've probably got another camera which is looking straight down on the product while you do a more detailed review. In this case, I've got the Tail Air mounted to my ceiling mount up here, and if I want to look down at the product, then I just hit the preset on the remote, and I'm now looking at this OBSBOT Tail Air, and I can chat away about how wonderful it is and all the other things. Got a nice zoomed in position there, and when I want to chat away to the camera again, I can select that preset and off I go, chatting away about, how wonderful it is, and then I can just talk about the wonderful boxes that it comes in. This camera then is potentially replacing at least 2 cameras in your current setup if you're doing product reviews. And I think I'm going to be using this a lot more in the future. It really is very useful, especially when you're using this. Well, this is another arrangement that I've fathomed out that I'm going to be using the tail airs in. So I've got one here and one around the corner, which I'll show you in a minute. So this is looking down onto my workbench, fairly typical setup. This is where I do some of my product reviews and where I do some of my assembly work and making. Now, I could actually have another preset which is looking at this wonderful A10 mini case, and if I want to, I could come back to me. Hello, how are you? Very good. And then I can start this tracking, and I can walk over here and maybe even start showing you something on here like this. So it gives me a great new perspective and some dynamic movement into the way that I can put together my review videos. Now, there's not just one here, but I've also got one over here, which is very good. So this allows me to maybe talk about something, whatever it is, but this might be a typical setup that you've got in your studio or workshop. They're very flexible, they don't take up much room, and they really are very, very good. So what else could we do? Well, I could get up and walk around and it can track me like this, all very nice. Or I could walk over here and I've got another preset which allows me to stand with this background. Or maybe I could show you my 3D printers, which are over here. All very nice. Part of a NASDAQ that I'm printing at the moment. I'm back now over here. Hello. And you've got another view of me, and I could be talking about something, looking at my ugly mug, whatever it is. So with just 2 tail airs, it gives me a lot of flexibility in how I can use the space in this workshop. And it's probably similar to you if you've got a studio or workshop where you're doing YouTube product reviews or tutorials. A couple of these with a smart remote and the app, and you can do an awful lot, whether it's going to preset positions or letting the cameras just track you. There's a lot of flexibility in these. Now, as well as being extremely powerful in a workshop or a studio like this for recording to SD card, these tail airs are also designed for live streaming. And if you use the OBSBOT app connected to your tail air using Wi-Fi and Bluetooth, you could stream direct from your phone to YouTube, Facebook, or wherever. But for a more flexible setup, they've got a micro HDMI connector, so they can be plugged directly into something like this A10 Mini and combine the outputs from other static cameras for a very comprehensive multicam streaming setup. You use the video switcher or OBS to choose which camera outputs live, and then either use the OBSBOT app or this smart controller to manually or automatically track the action, or simply switch between preset scenes using the tail airs. Potentially a very powerful and flexible setup. And if you wanted to stream outdoors, maybe a sports event of some kind, you can simply use HDMI over fibre and put the tail airs on tripods up to 100 metres away around a football pitch or whatever live event you're streaming. And it doesn't end there. OBSBOT also sell this USB-C to Ethernet adapter so you can control and send your video over a network using NDI. And then you've got full control over the tail airs using NDI software like NDI Tools, or even an Elgato Stream Deck like I've got here. Now this opens up even more possibilities. For example, you can assign buttons on your Stream Deck for camera control, and you're not restricted to the 3 custom presets that you get in the app or using the smart controller. It's a very powerful feature that I'll be exploring more in a later video. So I'll give you a quick rundown of what the OBSBOT app and the smart controller do when they're working with a couple of tail airs that I've got here. They're both facing each other. This one's filming this one, all a little bit incestuous. But there's so much functionality in here, it probably warrants another video that will cover things in a little bit more detail. So let's start off with the smart controller. You can select up to 3 cameras. You just bind it to whichever tail air you want. So this is camera number 2 at the moment, and I've got some preset positions on here, which you just program with these P buttons on there. And you can see that's turning there. There we go. And there's a number of buttons on here that turn it on and off. You can zoom in and out. Let's see if we can do that on this other one. Zoom in and out like that using the zoom button on the side. And then we've got a joystick which allows us to just manually zoom around like this. At the moment I'm controlling this one. And the nice feature is that if you double click it like that, it sets it back to its default position. Let's just put that there. And then with these buttons here, you can select people and animal and object tracking. And then the buttons at the top here, that's to start and stop recording, and that's to take a photograph. All very simple. And you charge it with a USB connector at the side. And this slot down here is for some more expansion modules that OBSBOT tell me that they're going to be releasing at some stage in the future. And this button here can be programmed to be whatever you like. In the app, you've got all the usual sorts of things, so I can change between manual and auto. When I'm in manual, you can change things like the ISO setting and so on, whichever you like that. Put it back onto auto, come out of that, and see what's down here. There's a whole load of settings to do with what media format you've got. Let's have a look at the media settings. You can choose between H.264, H.265, whatever bitrate you want, whatever resolution you want. This is actually recording at the moment, so we can't change too many things whilst that's in record mode. But when we stop record mode, there's a lot more you can do. You can turn on and off grid lines and that sort of thing. And see what we've got down here. You can also just press the screen and move around however you want. And along the bottom here, you've got some preset positions which are programmed in, which would work in a similar way to the buttons on the remote. Now there's an awful lot in here, and like I say, I think I'll probably do a separate video to go through all the features and the functionality of both the app and the smart controller, because I think it just needs a lot more detail going through with those. But I think you'll see that using a combination of the app and the smart controller gives you a lot of flexibility, a lot of power, whether you're recording in your studio or workshop, or indeed whether you're live streaming. Well, you've probably already guessed what I think about these. I've used quite a few different tracking cameras. The original DJI Osmo, the Pockets 1, 2 and 3, and the Hoham Smart Phone Gimbal. They're all okay at tracking, but this Tail Air is the absolute best, and by quite a long way in fact. And I know how I'm going to be incorporating these into my current setup. There's plenty more for me to explore with these, low light performance, which seems pretty good, auto tracking and streaming live events, and so on. Now, I've already used these on a couple of band and video shoots to see how reliable they are and what their practical limitations are. And after all, it's about knowing how things perform to make the best use of them. And I hope to bring you some more on these as I discover things along the way, and maybe make some how-to videos. We'll see. Apart from the general tail air performance and usefulness, the standouts for me are the way that the app and this smart controller integrate, so I can have a true multicam setup for making videos and for live streaming. And with this controller, I can operate up to 3 cameras that auto track and zoom on what I want, and I can have up to 3 preset positions and zoom levels on each camera. And I can use the app to do the initial setup and be my director or gallery monitor, and then operate everything one-handed with the smart remote without having to look away at anything. Just operate it down here, very easy. So, will these replace my current cameras? Not entirely, but they significantly improve my multicam setup. And the one-touch reset and custom presets on the smart remote are lifesavers for maintaining continuity when the cameras inevitably occasionally lose track. Now, one thing I would like to see on this is having some sort of log format for the video. It's not that I want to spend ages color correcting and grading, which is mostly a waste of time for YouTube videos, but what it does mean, I could more easily match the video output from these with my other cameras. But that's something that could probably be easily fixed in future firmware upgrades. Now, do let me know your thoughts on these in the comments. I'd love to know what you think about them. And if you enjoyed the video or found it helpful, give me a thumbs up. And if you're new here, please subscribe. And if you're on Facebook or Instagram, you can follow me there as well. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.